HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. Generation X will remember the 1974 novel Carrie by Stephen King, or at least the 1976 movie to which no remake has ever done any justice. Cut down to its simplest form, the novel is about an abuse victim hitting her breaking point and then lashing out indiscriminately, but with psychic powers added to the mix. The story establishes a harsh, restrictive home life for the title character, Carrie White, whose mother's ideas regarding morality, religion, and child-rearing were influenced by her own experience with single-teen motherhood during the socially conservative post-World War II era. Margaret White treats her daughter's sexuality, and sexuality in general, as a reprehensible human condition that taints all involved parties with evil. She restricts Carrie's social engagement and strictly warns her against association with boys. When Carrie experiences her first menstrual cycle, her mother presumes her cursed by the devil, so she castigates and punishes her. When Carrie begins to develop signs of telekinesis, Margaret views her daughter's new power as a sign that she is a witch. Carrie is socially awkward with her peers due to the psychological scars caused by the abuse she suffered at her mother's hands. Her female peers respond with nasty displays of relational aggression. After this results in the punishment of a group of popular girls, the Queen Bee character, Chris Hargensen, escalates her targeting of Carrie. The prom scene from the 1976 film based on this novel is an iconic part of movie history. After learning that Carrie is attending the dance that she is banned from as a result of her bullying, Chris conspires with her friends to pull a mean prank. During the dance, they manipulate the vote for prom king and queen to get Carrie and her date up on the stage in front of everyone. At the key moment, when Carrie, adorned with a tiara, holding a bouquet, and soaking up her classmates' applause, begins shedding tears of joy, Chris and her boyfriend dump a bucket of pig's blood down onto her from the rafters. Carrie's momentary sense of normalcy and acceptance are destroyed as her classmates burst into laughter. Flooded with humiliation, hurt, and anger, and haunted by the memories of abuse she has faced, she snaps and goes on a telekinetic killing spree, slaughtering her bullies, many of her other schoolmates, and chaperones, and later returning home only to be attacked by her mother, who she kills in self-defense. Two female characters in this story were portrayed as its main villains. Neither was the one who did all of the killing. That label is reserved for Carrie's abusive mother and Chris, the queen bee of her bullies. It's clear in the story that Carrie is a victim, driven to her eventual meltdown by the abuses of her tormentors, her murderous rage, if not justified, at least understandable. The reader, or the viewer, is supposed to have such sympathy and compassion for this poor, persecuted girl as to view her actions not as unconscionable malicious violence, but as a tragedy brought on by others' behavior. Moral of the story? Don't pick on that weird, socially awkward girl because she might use her secret, budding psychic powers to slaughter your entire senior class. And that's not victim blaming because remember, Carrie is the victim in this story. What if Carrie had been a Carl instead? Change little else in the story. The same abusive, psychologically twisted mother, the same degree of bullying by a gang of mean girls, and the same degree of public humiliation at a landmark social event of the teen years. Carl, rejected, abused, humiliated, and crushed, has that same moment Carrie experienced up on the stage, his peers' laughter echoing in his ears while his experiences of abuse and torment echo in his mind. Like Carrie, he cannot bear that. It is too much for him, and he snaps. And like Carrie, he responds by going on a killing spree, attacking his personal bullies, the laughing classmates, his teachers, his mother. How do you think the reviews of that story would go? I think it would be torn apart for glorifying male violence while simultaneously blaming it on women. Even if we changed the story further so that instead of Carrie's psychotic break and killing spree, Carl would just leave the event and withdraw from his social environment to commiserate with others who have experienced similar abuses, we'd be demonized for writing such a misogynistic portrayal. If he escaped the abuse by committing suicide, that demonization would rise to a rabid level. How dare we judge women's behavior so harshly? How dare we blame men's feelings on women? How dare we accuse the oppressed class of having the power to harm their oppressors? Besides, if he's shy and doesn't understand his culture's social protocols, it's not because of his abusive mother and her bizarre interpretation of a religion. It's because he hates women and he has unrealistic expectations of them, demanding impossible things like civility, grace, and discretion. If the story were further nerfed so that Carl instead sought psychological assistance to deal with his experiences of abuse, would that be socially acceptable? Probably not, because there can't be a boy complaining about being a lonely outcast in response to the way girls in his class treat him. We'd once again be demonized for misogyny, or half the story would have to feature a brave female psychologist treating that rapey, entitled incel for his raging case of toxic masculinity. And then there's the bit in the Carrie story where that one repentant bully, Sue, asks her boyfriend Tom to help her make up for her cruelty by asking Carrie to the prom instead of her. Carrie takes him up on it, and then Tom realizes she's actually quite attractive. The female reader reaction? "Aw, that's so sweet." Imagine the response of gynocentric critics to Sue asking Carl to the prom to make amends, and then falling for him. Like,
"Oh my god, are you suggesting she present herself to him like some kind of consolation prize just because her peers rejected him and hurt his little feels? Are women supposed to be used for lonely men's comfort now? Blah blah, misogynistic man-baby rape apologist, neck-bearded, meat-eating, wife-beating, chest-pounding, 40-year-old virgin, cis-white, hetero-male agents of the patriarchy, blah blah blah."
Our society has insufficient compassion for men and boys, and far too much tolerance for female dysfunction. Carrie's meltdown is not justified by the events of her story, but understanding the part of human psychology that makes it a possibility, even a probability, is a vital tool for prevention of all kinds of human catastrophes, regardless of the sex of the abuse victim or their manner of falling down. We must be able to hear all victims' complaints about the types of abuse portrayed in that story. We must be able to address those complaints and all of their causes with compassion and constructive advice, protection for victims, and guidance to help bullies and other abusers better relate to their families and their peers. We have to be able to discuss the impact of fatherlessness on this phenomenon. We need to be able to do this whether the abusers are male or female, whether old or young, whether the abuse is physical or mental, and regardless of who is the victim or why the victim was targeted. And though it won't stop us, we will most likely be subjected to those same types of abuse for the crime of trying to have those discussions. This week, HBR Talk will examine our society's gender-based double standards for victims of mean girl bullying, and how that translates into an inability to prevent tragic outcomes like social withdrawal, suicide, generational abuse cycles, and mass violence when abuse victims are pushed past their psychological limits.